as well. Okay, Mr. Iyer, I do want to bring you in the debate as well. There is a view, the fact that China and India sit together, are willing to talk, together and sort out differences, and also try and explain to Pakistan that things cannot continue the way they are already continuing. They will change from now. Could be a big boost for India. You agree?
I would like to add a little bit of perspective to this, Gauri. I think this outreach from China is perhaps a direct consequence of the sanctions being imposed by the United States. I mean, if you will just give me 1 minute, I'll give you a bit of perspective for our viewers. From after the Second World War, U.S. has been trying to find partners in the Orient to try and help them keep costs down on
manufactured product. First it was Japan, then South Korea, then Taiwan, and now China. With China, the size is so big that US can really not afford to ignore China. But China is feeling the heat because what the US has slapped are valid sanctions, in my opinion. Having been an inventor myself, intellectual property is not respected in China. So let's see how that plays out. But in the interim, the fact that China is reaching out to India and Pakistan for a trilateral summit, I'm not really sure how much is going to be gained for India as such. I would rather, keep keep talking to both the powers, United States and China, and try to see what best works for India.
Talk to Pakistan.
Okay, let's take that to Mr. Iyer as well. Yes, you have a point to make. Let me just add, the question that we were asking, as far as Doklam standoff that I asked Ambassador Goyal as well, the sense one got was that, there was, of course, a very stiff resistance coming in from India. There was a standoff, but after that, there is a certain amount of warmth that one can see in the China-India equation. And do you see that they do not want to repeat of Doklam?
Gauri, India needs to assert itself. It is number 3 in terms of economic size when you compare on PPP, production parity.
Purchasing power parity.
Purchasing power parity. Thank you. So I think India tends to still be quiet. I think India should quietly flex its muscles and try and see whether US or China would completely recognize India's right to the entire Pak-occupied Kashmir, the entire Kashmir as it joined in 1947. See, that I think is most important. Let's first make sure that we know what we have, geographically. And I think that's a fair request to ask. And right now it is China which is reaching out to India. So let's try and see if we can get that out of the way. And as far as Doklam is concerned, we are not someone who's going to go seeking for trouble. Even in the Doklam encounter, it was actually China which started building in what was called as, Bhutan territory, right? So I think India and China, and to some extent Pakistan, we all share the same cultural heritage. It's important for us to understand that together we can achieve a lot more than by just looking in different directions.
Okay.
But as the ambassador rightly says, Pakistan, who do you talk to?
Every level that need to be dealt with. Sri Iyer, you had a point to make.
Yes, Gauri. I think it is imperative that, it is inevitable that we also include India if you're going to try and resolve this Kashmir problem. I'll tell you some of the facts on the ground. In Gilgit-Baltistan, according to, many people, China has practically bought that place for itself. And CPEC goes through a very critical section of geography through the Gilgit-Baltistan area. And what I have seen videos and as well as read stories, there is a lot of population that is being moved in from China into the Gilgit area. This needs to be verified, of course.
Right.
But what I'm trying to make point is, China is already in the room as far as talking about Kashmir, the United Kashmir is concerned. They are the real owners of the Gilgit-Baltistan area. So if there is any way China can try and come up with a reasonable argument that makes sense for India to say, okay, well, there is a way we can probably participate in this as long as China recognizes India's right to the entire Kashmir.
Okay.
And then says that, okay, we will try and work this thing through. It might not happen in a year, but at least there is steps that need to be taken to move forward. And I think there's also one other significant development that perhaps we should cast our glance on. Remember when Prime Minister Modi went and visited Indonesian Prime Minister? Mm-hmm. There was an agreement that there will be a patrolling or something of that sort along the Malacca Straits.
Yes.
The reason I'm bringing this up is because OBOR and CPEC are counter into initiatives by China to get around the Malacca Strait problem.
Okay, fair point.
So in the entirety, India has a significant role to play. By being the wise player in this triumvirate, India can get a lot for itself.
Let me open this up to Shri Iyer. Shri Iyer, now it is a bit of enlightenment, yes, but also a conjoining of interests that has brought Modi and Xi and India and China to these crossroads. And while, of course, we have to look at a global stage, which we must, India is a much bigger country with much bigger games to play and much bigger stakes to be involved in, and much more responsibility around the globe than just with Pakistan. But we have a real and present problem. How can China help?
Thanks for putting a very good question, Rishabh. I think if you look at the economic sizes as per PPP, India is number 3, US is number 1, and China is number 2. And I guess China will cross US in some time in the future. Now, whoever number 3 aligns with is probably going to be very significant for the next few decades or so. And I think India is in a very good position right now to try and make sure that its interests are protected vis-a-vis both China and the United States. Rishabh, I want to just add one little thing about the CPEC corridor that's coming through Pakistan. What I have researched about this and what I have found out is the road, the CPEC road, actually goes through most of Pakistan's populous regions.
Yes.
It's now, it's a good guess in that China is going to make sure that its investment in the CPEC corridor is protected, which means China is going to be actually placing its people along the roads. There are going to be actually 2 roads. Okay, it kind of bifurcates and then goes down to the Arabian Sea.
Yes.
And then it's a good possibility that China is probably going to make sure that its interests are.
Let me go across to them. Shri Iyer, you first, then Ambassador Prakash, then I come back to General Sehgal. Shri Iyer.
Yes. Rishabh, I think we have to take a step back and look at the big picture. United States.
Ambassador Prakash, I'm just coming to you. Mr. Shri Iyer has the floor.
Chinese motives.
Go ahead, sir.
It is standard operating procedure for China.
Yeah, Ambassador Prakash, yeah, just hold your thought. Mr. Shri Iyer is taking the thought. I'm coming to you in a second. Mr. Iyer.
Yes. Thanks, Rishabh. So, U.S. was, using China as a low-cost producer of its finished goods.
Yes.
And I think U.S. has been looking around for somebody else, and I think they have cast their glance at Vietnam, and possibly India might be in a good place to fulfill that vacuum should U.S. decide that the intellectual property protection in China is not strong enough, but the same cannot be said of India.
Yes.
India's intellectual property is very strong. The courts are very transparent. You know what is going on. Therefore, what does India need to do? And I think Prime Minister Modi is already doing those things. You need to guarantee power 24/7.
Yes.
And you also need to have
yes, and of course the logic should here being that of course in our enlightened self-interest a round 2 is called for. Sri Iyer, 30 seconds, sir.
Yes. Before the tripartite talks can start, India could lay one precondition and have China recognize that the entire Kashmir, Gilgit-Baltistan, POK, whatever, is part of India. Let them commit to that before the talks start. And then let's see how things